Good morning. Thank you, Marcella. Good morning, this snowy England weather morning. Very excited to be here and speaking to you about this topic, which I'm really passionate about. Hi, I'm Pamela Gupta, president of OutSecure. And what is OutSecure? OutSecure is really a play on words as an opposite of insecure. And like a few minutes just talking about the name, because as Marcella did, most people OutSecure as outsource. That's a name that is more known to people. What OutSecure? It's really more than the name. It's the approach and the mindset. So traditionally, when you look at security, the approach has been to secure a company on the outside, meaning make the outside very strong with technology such as firewalls, etc., and protect the company from the outside world. But today's threat landscape, that doesn't hold. We have to secure our internal critical assets. And when you think about securing, think and securing out, all the way out. When you send the core and as you go outside to your business partners, to you might be hosting your data, you're talking to providers, business partners, and we're going to look at a slide as how this perimeter is becoming very porous. So OutSecure is more than a name. It's really the approach and the mindset in security, which is secure OutSecure. As Marcel mentioned, I've been defining security programs and strategies in Fortune 500 companies for over 15 years. And I realized a lot of companies are not protecting themselves with a security program that is with their unique business risks. Is about. It's more about provoking thought and why security is now not a technology issue, but really a business issue, and what are the things that we need to take a look at. So I'm going to start now, and I'm going to go into the presentation. I realize there might be a lot of information, and if there is some clarification you'd like to get into, feel free to reach me at the end. Also, I will have my contact information available. So let's get started. Is the following, and if there is anything on the agenda that you feel is not covered and question about, let's address that definitely at the end or even as a follow-up. We'll be talking about following. Cyber landscape. What is the risk landscape for businesses today? And businesses vulnerable. So what is the state of business today? What company is vulnerable? The obvious answers to that are online. We are trying to make as much information digital and online so it can be accessed by the right people. But it's not just the right people who can access it. When we make it available, it becomes available to everyone if there are right security controls in place. So that's what we're going to go a little bit more depth into as to what is making companies vulnerable. Being online, digital, interconnected, and data and more data. A lot of companies collect information as they can. And sometimes that can have repercussions. Again, I'm going to go into more detail on that. About the current threats. What is our current threat for businesses, whether regardless of which vertical you might be in? Excuse me. Then we want to talk about a security strategy for protection. Is it really necessary? Isn't that a IT issue? What changed? Why is now being put as a business risk? Why why do security strategy? So that's what we're going to take a look at. And lastly, we have a security strategy. We are protecting the information owner. Is that enough? As mentioned, this is going to be a thought-provoking session, and there are some questions which turn into rhetorical questions since you cannot answer them. This is WebEx. If this was a interactive session, then definitely I would, pose questions to the audience. So let's look at our stage, setting the stage. What is the global economy? I'm going to for a minute let you digest this slide because it's a very important slide. But this is an FS Isaac slide. FS Isaac is an organization that makes information. It's an intelligence community for the financial industry. So this slide indicates is the relative proportion of physical assets, tangible assets, cash in circulation, measures, gold reserves, etc., as that you can see in red, compared to virtual funds that are either tied to commerce or banking, deposits or loans, which is entirely electronic. And those are the blue circles. So we have the global overview. And that really brings home the point as to the comparison or the difference in what an electronic fund, resource, as opposed to the physical reserve. We talk about cyber threat, cyber reality, cyber risk reality. You can say it is such a big issue. If there are virtual funds, if there are electronic funds, that's already going to be a bigger target than even the physical assets, such as money in banks, because there's really not that much money in physical assets. It's spread out and accessible over the internet, over the network. Even if it's not the physical internet, it could be on the company's network. That really brings the point home. Again, the U.S. overview, that's picture. The difference is still the same between physical and the electronic and the tangible assets. The threat trends. What are the threats out there? And this is a synopsis of all the different threats that exist, which are not very different from when the net had just come to be. Three threats that I want to talk about is nation state. 2, organized crime. 3 is the hacktivist. Now, all three of these can wreak havoc on a company. It doesn't have to be that, one not stronger necessarily than the other. They're all very well funded. They're all well resourced. So each of these has an ability to really wreak havoc on a company's bottom line. And depending on which industry you're in, you get it. And I'm going to we have a slide in this presentation where we're going to go over for you which industry you're in, be out targeting you. Mindset of before where it's only companies that are targeted, or the reality of yesteryears where only the banks, for instance, might be getting targeted, has completely changed, and we're going to take a look at that. Which threat? Who is a threat out there? The nation states, organized crime, and hacktivists. So, for instance, what is the driver there? What are they after? Espionage is the first thing, is the biggest thing. These are countries in the world which are targeting this, for instance, whether it's coming from China or Iran. In the it was released by McAfee in 2011, and there is a report where they talked about malware. There is software written for express intent of malicious outcome, whether it is to steal information, whether it is to affect your computers, etc. But McAfee had authored a report about malware that had been used by Chinese cyber criminals, which was revealed that these cyber criminals were tied to the People's Liberation Army, which is the Chinese government. If you want to go into more detail on that, definitely contact me. There's also a report by Mandian, which talks about a big building, which is all it has is, in China. All it has is cyber criminals who are sitting the full-time job, and all their only sole purpose is to break companies, to do cyber hacking, and infiltrated data from a broad section of 150 organizations within with a 2 to 5 year range. These companies did not even know that they're being attacked, that their their intellectual property was being siphoned out. It was being exfiltrated. And to my point earlier as to why we target, regardless of what vertical you're in, what sector you're in, this is a broad range of companies. It is, as I mentioned on the slide, New York Times, Facebook, the company Nortel. So the list is large. It's 150 organizations. States working after is intellectual property. Threat looking at is organized crime, and again, this is a well-organized industry. They're not your one-offs or the hacker of the years that people talked about. These are the real corporations, or on the dark side, it's crime of corporations, where they're attacking companies in a very structured fashion. And we already saw from the global economy slide that the stakes are very high. So there's that element to that. And attack, the mix of social engineering and technical attack. So this is not just technology. Engineering means that's where you really need to be aware. You're a business. It's not going to be your technology that can help you. It is going to be, are you out on Facebook? Are your folks on LinkedIn or social media? What is there? It's very easy, for instance, to take us, and even on LinkedIn, not talking about Facebook, where I'll give an example. I had accepted somebody's invitation on LinkedIn and just look at their contacts. There were a lot of his contacts were people who had sailboats or were selling, etc. And just looking at the contacts, it was easy to get an idea of what would be of interest to this person. So had anybody looking at that, they had malicious intent, can send him an email which is very attractive for that particular area of interest. Chances are very high that he would add sometimes all that is required to click on an attachment, to infect it, to into your network. They use that as a pivot point to get to the rest of the network and do damage. So it's really clearly become a people threat, and a people social engineering is a powerful tactic. activists. That's the third vector. Um, those are the anonymous. Um, Snowden has been in the news. That's again a large threat vector. And in addition to these three, there's one where we should not forget that the corporate espionage that has existed for hundreds of years, that has not gone away. So even though these are the ones that is a common factor for all companies, there's always one that is going to target a company because of who they are. Interesting slide, and the intent here is to talk about what is the company perimeter. Remember in the beginning I had talked about the traditional approach has been to protect the company from the outside, have a firewall, and it was all technology based, so you could do that in the years. But there is a reality for today's companies, right? They're mobile, BYD, which is a big reality for a lot of different reasons. Bring your own device, where people get their own devices and accessing the networks and getting data. Cloud, hosting in the cloud, and sometimes not always making the move based on assessment or assessing that what is, if it is outside my immediate control, who has access to my information, what the information that is being hosted. There, Target, for instance, was hosting its data centers at Amazon, and recently they reversed that move and trying to duplicate that same model that Amazon has. So I'm saying that don't compromise any of their information, but you have a direct conflict of interest of that sort. Think when you are hosting it, when Target was hosting it at Amazon and trying to come up as a competitor to Amazon, think about what is the potential Amazon to get access to that data. And again, I'm not saying that's what happened, but I'm saying that it can happen. So you have to be aware of that as a business owner. Why is that? Because when you host something, it depends. There are many different levels of cloud, but if you're hosting an application, if they have access to from support for you, for instance, you have privileged rights to access information that you may not want to give them access to. So that is a possibility, but for any company to move things to cloud is a hole that you're cutting in through that outermost layer, which was traditionally what was protecting you from the outside world. Legacy app integration. Think about in instances where mission-critical applications, legacy applications on the internal network are accessed by third parties for support or for providing data, but there's direct access to the mainframe sometimes even. So there's a large amount of perimeter going on now, which did not exist in yesteryears. Applications. That's a quality for everyone now. Impulse service. You remote into your network. You're using VPN. Is that I won't go to anything technical, but there is technology misconfiguration there that can be an issue if it's not done right. And then last but not least is connectivity with the partners and suppliers. This is something that absolutely has to be handled with the right processes is not just a technology issue. You do the due diligence, make sure that people know what it is that you want to protect. So I'm going to talk about what it is that you want to protect. Why is this a business issue, right? That's what we are talking about, covering here. A lot of people don't know what their intellectual property is. So if you don't know what it is, you won't be able to protect it, whether it's internal or external. You might have the best contract, your legal team might be doing the best job and have covered everything that they know of. But unless there are conversations happening within an organization and within the business, with stakeholders, with the teams, clearly identifying what is it that needs to be protected, the best contract will not do any good if that has not been clearly laid out as in terms of what is that needs to be protected. So there are blanket terms, for instance, and I have reviewed hundreds and thousands of contracts. The right verbiage is there, but it's at a level, not at the level which is enough to protect you as a business, really, unless you do it right. So this is the new reality. This is the new company perimeter, which is why it's really important that it's being thought of as a business and a business issue. Things that I'd like you to say. One is security is a business issue, it's not a technology issue. Second, what you have to protect. And you have to do about what are the ways that, firstly, what is the information within your organization? And then give some thought as to what are the processes, who's accessing it, what processes in place within the company for accessing that information. Is it available to everyone, or is there a approved process, for instance? The message is not that you do not have any data being stored, right? Business needs to know if there's a business to store it, then you do have, and you're always going to have information that is going to be a good. But the way to recommend way from a security perspective is if you need information, know it and then have the right controls around it. So another example, I was at one of the companies that I was at, we were storing credit card information and PII, even PII, which is personally identifiable information. There's, for instance, your credit card information, which is personally identifiable information. You also have Social Security, right? If your credit card number gets compromised, that's pretty bad. But if your Social Security number gets compromised, that's even worse. And about health information, right? So see where I'm going with that, right? It's a tiered, even PII is tiered where you can have more sensitivity around certain elements of data than others. So business owner, as a business leader, again, you really need to know what it is that your company is possesses. What is the information that is required in a general sense? And if there's a sensitive information that is being stored for valid business reasons, you have to be able to access to it. And we can go into how to do that later. And then you have to know how to protect your data, but know that it's reached. Okay? That is just the reality today. So it's not only enough to have a data protection plan, but you have to have a data breach plan. And there are a lot of considerations that go into that data breach plan. It's, for instance, who needs to be notified, depending on what kind of data it is. Um, and I'll talk about that a little bit in a few slides. So, and just to rephrase and reiterate, security is not an IT issue, and if that's the mindset, then your business can be hurt. So let's take a moment and take who do you think could be targeting you? What kind of business are you in? What is who could be the enemy? And what do they want? And where information or where is that data within your company? How are you going to get to that? Is it party? Is it a particular processing entity that is processing your financial transactions? Is that internal or external? You to that's some thought and see where is that information. Once they get that, what can you do with it? And as I was talking about the data breach plan, if it's compromised, then how is it going to impact you? How is it going to impact your bottom line? And there's a lot more to that, how it can impact your bottom line. The cost of a compromised PII record is $175 per record. That includes the cost of notification. You have to notify the, let's say it's a credit card. The cost to notify the consumers depends on states. Each state has different laws about what is required. There's the PR. So a lot of, and then of course there's a downtime too. So there's a lot of factors that one would not even associate if in your regular day-to-day. But there is a cost associated with data breach is the point I want you to remember. So let's take a look at, what you must have heard of Affordable Care Act and Care. Let's look at what might be doing. I'm back. So that's a funny video, and I just wanted to include that and remember it better. The message. The message really is you need what information, especially sensitive information, do you need to do your business? If you don't need it, don't collect it. That's one thing. The important message from here, and I don't know if everybody got all nuances because we went through it one time and a few times because I've used it in numerous presentations. And you can just search on YouTube for ordering pizza or Obamacare to see this video again. The the nuances that I'm referring to, access of data. The person ordering the pizza or the person at the other end at Pizza Palace who's in the order does all the information. Out of the 15 pieces and sensitive PII, I might add, piece of information she referenced and she had access to, how many really necessary to order the pizza? The name, the address, and the credit card. Okay, so 3. So as companies, we really have to start thinking about what is it that we are collecting. Do we need it all? Especially when it comes to sensitive information, where is it used, and do we need it? Does everyone need it? Restrict access. That's your biggest friend to you that cannot help you restrict the access and help your business. But also, if there was a breach, you can demonstrate that you had good controls in place, for instance, where so for the companies I was at, as I was starting to say earlier, we were using credit cards. Now, when it came to me for a risk assessment, my first question to the business was, who has access to this? Our whole team, or out of the whole company that might have access to this application, who really needs the entire credit card number, for instance? Needs the Social Security number. Nobody should have access to this unless it's clearly stated there's a justification for it. There's a business need to know, which be documented and by the business owner. Traditionally, that's not something your security team would do because security doesn't know who has access to what. They should be really helping you set up the process. In terms of the providing that access, that really should come from the business owners. And sometimes in a lot of companies, there are databases with a lot of information that are good target, but identified business owner. So that's another thing you got to think about. How do we secure that? Who do we identify as the rightful owner who can approve to get access to that? And I've implemented sophisticated but simple from a process perspective. We're sophisticated in terms of devising the plan, in terms of even for the people support applications, such as DBAs, who have a very, very privileged access, godlike access, if you want to call it that, how to get razor sharp so that only the people who need to have access have the access. And there's the technology side to it, which I will not get into, but allude to in passing, which is there are a lot of things that can be implemented on the technology side, which can help protect encryption, such as monitoring, etc. Going back to this, just want you to walk away with the mindset that this is be happening in your business. You could have all the information just throughout the network, throughout your processes. You need to know what it is that you want to protect, because if it's PII, if it is sensitive information, depending on industry, you could be regulated, so you have to protect that anyway. What's more difficult is intellectual property. A lot of times people don't know what that intellectual property is, And even if they do know what it is, it's not very easy, even with technology, to identify how to protect it. What data? What intellectual property? That's your proprietary data, engineering designs, research data, your brand information. One example on that, I was at a company, Fortune 500, and one of my first questions when I met my boss was, how is our team protecting the intellectual property of the company? And I was laughed at. They said, we don't have a secret formula to protect. So that really brings home the point that a lot of companies, whether they're Fortune 500s or the no fortunes, they don't know what the intellectual property is. Maybe that is known by a few people in the company, but that conversation needs to happen at a broad level where people who are charged with protecting your information, such as your CISOs, to know what it is so that they can it. Here, people are spending a lot of money on protecting sensitive data such as credit card information, for instance. I reference to it earlier. If credit card is compromised, it's damaging, but it's not a showstopper. It's not as if you're in essence of the company. If they're compromised, of what is your uniqueness in the company, if that's compromised, then you're not going to have a business anymore. So it have more far-reaching effects, in other words. So it's important to protect, but as a company, it's worth having the discussion to see what is more important to protect. And people who can help protect are available. So the more information you collect, the more information that you don't require for doing business you collect, the better you become, because these things, and these are just three, and I could go on for just talking about the breaches that are in today's news. Very recent breaches, and if you look at they are in different verticals. There's Chase breach, 465,000 accounts exposed. That was earlier this year, which is a security company. It was attacked, compromised. That's the Krebs on security. Broker giants hacked by ID theft service. Then Then you're aware Adobe recently got hacked. And that is a very one. I'm going to just talk about that for a few minutes. They got hacked. First, it was the passwords that got hacked, which made big news because there were a lot of them. And important, well, you might be using that same password on other sites, even for something like banking. And yes, that can be compromised, and that can have a effect on that particular individual whose password was compromised. Bigger news item for the Adobe hack, me as a security professional, is the fact that source code was compromised. If you look at implications of that, that has a magnitude much, much more sinister than even the passwords, and I'll tell you why. Think about what exists on most laptops and most machines around the world. You have PDF, you're using Adobe. If you're using Adobe and if there is the source code has been compromised, and if the source code was not developed strategically, did not have security built in strategically, which means, I'm not going to go into that. That's a big topic by itself. But not set up correctly, there could be security vulnerabilities in that code, which now, because it's in the hands of the wrong people, they can plant side and back doors into that code and put it back and start compromising people's machines and devices across the world. So the sorry, there's something that's popped up. The implications are much more far-reaching for that, which is not just the passwords, but it's the source code that compromised. And because that code, because software is used so commonly across the world, it really raises the exposure bar. So, does it still sound like an IT issue? And I hope that you're agreeing with me and understand why it's not. This is based on data from Verizon's 2012 data report, and it's a very good report. I encourage you to read that. If you would like to get a link for that, I can send you one. It talks about, depending on which industry you're in, what do you have that is of interest and by whom. So, for instance, let's just take if you are a financial service. Information, financial account information is going to be of interest. Going to get in. How is a malicious user going to break in? It's going to be physical tampering, brute force attacks, malware, spyware. And by the way, this malware, the company that we were talking about, roots that were being discovered, or malware, which was information was trying to be exfiltrated out through this malware, which was, I should say, this malware, but different forms of malware. On a daily basis, we were finding incidents, and it was a whole game. You something out, another one pops up. The amount of attacks and the amount of incidents that go up dramatically, even something that you want to get to. So, for instance, if you had new viruses coming out or malware being released, now it's 50,000, which is coming up on a daily basis. So the really increased order of magnitude. Targeted equipment, that's the for a financial institution or for retail or for food service industry, that's going to be the POS, of course, PM. And where is all this data being stored? That's, of course, a big target for regardless of who you are. So if you're, depending on which industry you're in, if you're in manufacturing, then you may be targeted by nation state. If you're public service even, then it's activists, for instance, like the Amazons of the world would get, or Googles of the world would get attacked by activists or nation states. The point is, regardless of who you are, there is something of interest. Protect yourself. There are industry practices which be your company's best practice, right? So, as business leaders, be agile and nimble and stay on top of that curve, and you want to have a rewarding business. You have too much security, that's going to slow down. So, for instance, some of the risk management and security management practices and frameworks that exist out there. And I don't expect you to read this, but I put it really as a reference to give an of how involved and sophisticated these frameworks have to be. And this is typically what we use is the ISO 27001 when we do assessment, for instance. And each one of these, there's a security policy, there's the asset management, human resource, et cetera. I won't go into all of them. This is what we're looking at when we do a risk assessment. But because it's a best practice, industry best practice, it really has to be tailored to what is relevant for your industry, what is relevant for your particular company, and your operational model, right? If it's internal, external, make sure, depending on who your third parties are. And one thing to remember is that you may be very well protected, but if you have a third-party provider who has access to your network and they're well protected, well, then guess what? That's the weak link, right? So it's easier to attack. another point of compromise. There could be many, so that's why it has to be done in a structured and strategic way. It could be something as simple as your cleaning crew. The crew, has that gone through a process and are trust, and do you have the right things in place where somebody walking unattended through offices get access to valuable information? Is everything locked up, for instance? So there's a lot that goes in the background, but if it has to be done properly, it has to be a strategic and a structured approach to security. So it comes down to, it's all a strategy. I talked in the beginning, do you need a strategy? Well, on what your business is, you need an approach that is strategic to your business, a security strategy which protects your business risks. In other words, there is no one size fits all. Data, it is that you want to protect. If you don't, don't. Then the other thing is when you're done, delete it, meaning have good policies, data retention policies, especially when it comes to sensitive data. If you need it, then protect it. Internal vendors, service providers, business partners, got to diligence before entering into relationship with them. Actually, we talked about that the pizza video. And the greatest risk, of course, is going to be internal employees. So you want to remove the temptation. Don't have data available to everyone or easily available. There was one company I was at where their network topology was accessible on an intranet portal. You could go with anything, errors, what server segments were, etc. So you just need to know what it is that you want to protect and make sure it's not accessible to everyone, depending on how small your company is. It could be really important. That is access to data. So even if it's not a disgruntled employee, right? Somebody leaving or somebody who's been fired or who's just doesn't have the right ethics, could be somebody could get tempted just because you have so much information that can be monetized. So again, you have to know what kind of information you have. And even if it's not a usually bad person, but somebody could get tempted if you don't have the controls in place. You just don't want to take that chance. Quote from Robert Mueller, he was a FP director, kind of summed up quite well. There are only two types of companies, those that have been hacked and those that will be. The point is, it's inevitable. You're trying to do business, you're trying to make everything available, and that comes with a price. So know what you have, protect, and know that you might probably will have, and if that happens, they see guidance on declaring any material risks to networks. Also, FTC, the FTC, State Attorney General's office, each state has its own rules and requirements to show what documentation is required to show due care that you're protecting information of customers and PI, etc. So that also, is not a thing to do when there is a breach. That's something that is expected of a company to show what security controls are in place to protect the information that they have. So how do you manage all this? it is you want it, and the best way to do it is a structured approach, which is assessments to establish what is the current risk, what is your company, the environment, who could be targeting, and the legal and regulatory requirements, right? It could be companies, so you have SOX to think about, PCI, etc. But in addition to all that, it's important to look at intellectual property. And would make sense. It has to make sense with your infrastructure, with your culture, with your management practice. Okay. We have for a 5-minute thing for questions. Follow up. I'm including all my information here.
Hi, thank you so much for your presentation. It was a wealth of information. And if you have questions, you could write it on the chat function or on the Q&A function. And I'll start with one question I have here for you. Business, what is the budget or percentage budget that you should allow for security purposes? Any insight on that?
Absolutely. So here's where security spending breaks the traditional mold, which is doesn't necessarily need a bigger budget. And the converse side of that is just because you're small, it depends on what you have. You know, if you are, for example, doing a project for the Defense Department, right, the DoD, and you have state secrets, so you would need more protection than a small company, which may be, just selling something. So it depends on the context. But as and the other thing to think about is security is not going to cost, is not technology. So some changes that you could make, which will not cost you anything. It does depend, but one should not think that everything is going to come at a price, because you might just have a one-time price cost that you pay to figure out what it is that you need to protect and how, and that it's just it's immense, really.
And this is actually a little related to the next question we have, which is one start. That how can I protect my company from a data breach today? What's step one?
So the one is is a risk assessment, and if you're, if you're small and you just need ideas, feel free to just reach out to me. I can give you ideas on how to do a self-assessment, figure out what that you have, what's your business model, what you have that would be of target, and how it is or how complicated it is, I will let you know. But it really would start with a risk assessment.
Thank you. Pam said feel free to follow up with her on that. Here I have another one. Is there such a thing as too much security? What need to or reinvent something in your business?
So as a security professional, I say paranoia is good. No such thing as too much security. But the only time I would defer, I would deviate from that answer, is if security is becoming a hindrance to progress. Okay. If it's out and well placed, it should not be, because security is really an enabler. So it has to be. And if your security folks are not enabling you, you just need to have that conversation with them to count. But there is no such thing as too much security, unless, like I said, if it's hindering progress. And it is to enable without hindering. It just needs more conversation, as I said. Better understanding.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Marcella.
And I'll give you one last question. I think we still have time for, oops, sorry, I have another one coming in. Wow, coming in. Okay. Actually came in twice. So can you address the issue of legacy app integration? And I believe this is to another question I have where it says, in times of technological integration, are you as a business dependent on the security infrastructure of those other companies you integrate?
Absolutely. So that is, applications, the legacy applications were not written with security in mind. So it's very difficult to or retrofit the security into these apps. So in these scenarios, what I have done in the past is really look at what is called a compensating control. Look at that. What is the existing technology or process that can be used to fire that? So to give an example, the companies that I was looking at, they had this really old application, custom built, and the developers had left, so they had no way of really making any changes in the application. Recommendation for them was to take a look at database monitoring software so that we could apply the right controls and make sure that there was nothing going to the node that could be compromised because the application could not provide the right controls. So we had to take at what could be fortified at the back end, for instance. So it depends on what it is, but definitely the approach would be to take a look at compensating controls.